Hello and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. In this program today, we will be discussing whether the joint Indo-US naval exercise is a signal to contain China. In a major development, America's largest aircraft carrier USS Nimitz participated in a passage exercise with India's largest aircraft carrier INS Vikramaditya in Indian Ocean region on Monday. The development took place at a time when China is intensifying its belligerence in the region. Although India and the US have been holding naval exercises since 1992 under the code name Malabar Exercises, this is the first time that the US has sent to this region its largest aircraft carrier, which is in fact the largest battleship in the world. What does it mean for India-US relationship? Is there a signal to China which has launched aggression on the line of actual control with India? We will try to find answers to such questions in this episode of the agenda from veteran diplomat, Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vora. But before we start the discussion, let's have a look at this brief report.
With China stepping up its belligerence, the US has deployed its 2 aircraft carriers in the Indian Ocean region along with 4 warships. One of these aircraft carriers, USS Nimitz, which is the largest in its class in the world, participated in the passage exercise with India's largest aircraft carriers, INS Vikramaditya, on Monday. The exercise, PASEX, took place in the Bay of Bengal near the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This is seen as a signal to China, which has launched aggressions against India on the line of actual control in Ladakh. The US has deployed the naval assets in this region to counter China's increasing expansionist design and ensure freedom of navigation in South China Sea, over which Beijing lays its absolute claims. China's expansionist design have been causing unease among several of its neighbors, particularly Vietnam, the Philippines, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Brunei. The deployment of American naval assets comes against the backdrop of its Secretary of State Mike Pompeo asserting that China has no claim in the South China Sea beyond 20 nautical miles and that the US was determined to ensure free navigation in the region. On the other hand, China is also conducting military drills in the area near the contested Paracel Islands. China has also launched the first 2 Type 075 amphibious assault ships, which will form the spearhead of an expeditionary force to play a role similar to that of the US Marine Corps. And like the US Marines, the new force will be self-contained, able to deploy solo with all its supporting weapons to fight in distant conflicts or demonstrate Chinese military power. The 40,000-ton Type 075 ships are a kind of small aircraft carriers and can accommodate up to 900 troops with space for heavy equipment and landing craft, according to the Western military experts who have studied satellite images and photographs of the new vessels. Indian Navy on its part is alert to any misadventure by China and working with its counterpart from the countries in the region. Bureau Report.
So let's welcome Dr. Vora. Welcome, Dr. Vora. Let me ask you the first question. You have seen that 2 US aircraft carriers are in this region and they have been parked here, and one of those, USS Nimitz, yesterday held a passage exercise with Vikramaditya. So how do you see this development?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaul. Always a pleasure to be on a show with the world's finest anchor because I get to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
May I first tell you very briefly about the South China Sea? All across the world, some of my friends call me, for example, from Africa and say, oh, what's with the South China Sea? Why aren't you worried about the Indian Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic? First of all, it's one of the world's busiest waterways, as you know better than I do. 1/3 of global maritime trade passes through it. 4/5 of China's energy imports go through the South China Sea, and about 2/3 of its total trade goes through the South China Sea. It's also, it has a lot of oil, it has fish, 10% of the world's fish comes from there, etc., etc. Now, sir, the message that is being sent to China that the freedom of navigation is a principle of customary international law, that ships flying the flag of any sovereign state shall not have interference from other states. In fact, 2011, there was an agreement on declaration of conduct that will behave properly. China, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan signed this agreement. But what has happened, sir, is that after the Beijing Olympics were over, China bared its fangs. And in fact, do you know, sir, that what they are claiming in the South China Sea is 2,000 kilometers away from the Chinese mainland? Come on, happy birthday. I mean, is this some kind of a joke? Now what happened, sir, if you look at the chronological sequence of events, in the last week of May, the American president spoke with the Prime Minister of India, and the American president, mark my words, tweeted that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he said, my friend Narendra, as he always says, was not in a good mood. And a month later, the American aircraft carriers, the two of them, are streaming into the South Pacific. I'm not saying that we asked for it, I don't know, but the timing seems very, very interesting. And this exercise that has taken place, it's an exercise between equals. All right, you have two, I have only one. You have a bigger aircraft carrier than mine. But the fact that we are looking at interoperability, fact that the two navies say we can work together and we can choke the Straits of Malacca, because India is preeminently placed because of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands to cut off the waterway for Chinese shipping, sir. It acquires tremendous geostrategic significance. The Chinese, sir, if I may use the word, are running scared. They are really upset about what has happened. If you read the articles in the Global Times, etc., it's all saying, you know, don't do it, don't promote, don't provoke us, we'll do this, we'll do that. The reality is they can do nothing, sir. Empty vessels make the most noise.
Dr. Vora, you talked about freedom of navigation. I have covered so many India-US summits and ASEAN summits. There have been talks. There has been a talk rather. In all statements, joint statements, there has been a mention about freedom of navigation. I mean, for over a last decade rather. But now I think, is it for the first time America means business or intends to walk the talk? Because earlier, so far it has been only talk that there should be freedom of navigation and all that. Is this a signal that they mean business now?
You are absolutely right. Their core interests were not being hurt earlier. And when China says South China Sea is its core interest, for the Americans it wasn't. Now, sir, with the way things are developing, with all their allies, people who have relied on American protection, whether it's the Philippines or it's Taiwan or it's Japan, they have believed that America will come to their aid. And this is the time for America to show the flag and say, I mean business. The Chinese have been saying, listen, guys, don't trust the Americans because they are distant friends. We are near neighbors, so we are more important to you than they are, which is a load of nonsense. Nobody trusts the Chinese anymore. And Mr. Kaul, if I may use a term that is mine, I believe there is a spontaneous coalition of the angry forming against China, both in the South China Sea as well as across the Himalayas and so on. Countries that have had it with the Chinese coming together spontaneously and saying, listen guys, enough is enough, we're not going to take no more nonsense from you. So the Americans certainly intend to walk the talk. Don't forget that this is election year. In a few months there'll be elections. President Trump has always been saying, and so has the candidate Joe Biden, who's likely to oppose him, that we intend to show the Chinese that we mean business. We don't like the Chinese. We don't like Chinese behavior, period. This is a golden opportunity to demonstrate it. And let me also put it to you like this, sir. Ultimately, when push comes to shove, if countries have to make the choice between India and China, it's a no-brainer, sir. They will choose the world's largest democracy with a proven record of never coveting the territory of any other country.
So you mentioned about elections. Actually, I was coming to those elections. Are the American maneuvers only intended for the elections, or is it something more sustained?
You know, that's a very interesting question, sir. There are always two audiences for the Americans, for us, for anybody when we take some action. One is the domestic audience. In this case, very much so, he's telling the people of America, look, I mean business. But there's also an international audience, and he's reassuring the countries of the region that, look, I may not be Asian, but I am the dominant power in Asia, and I intend to keep it that way. You might recall that the former Secretary of State Mrs. Hillary Clinton had talked about a pivot to Asia. The Chinese got very worried about that this means now instead of keeping busy in the Middle East and in Latin America, the Americans are going to now come around into the South China Sea. Also remember, it was when the Beijing Olympics were over that the Chinese started misbehaving and building all these little things in the Spratly Islands and so on and so forth. Sir, nobody trusts them anymore. What America is doing is, I would say, as much for its domestic audience as for its international partners. And I believe they now consider India as a partner. I've been checking media coverage, you have too, in the United States about what the Chinese are saying. And invariably, in United States, in Japan, in Taiwan, in other parts of the world, in the Philippines, it has been pro-India.
So as much as if you talk about whether we should trust the USA has been talking a lot about India being a friend, a strategic partner and a military partner and all those things for over a decade, more than a decade rather. And it has always said that India should be a power in the region. But at the same time, when we want to buy as 400 missile defense system from Russia, America has a problem and they put sanctions. So what kind of well-wisher is then America or of a friend?
Sir, ultimately, as the great Chanakya had said, that in every relationship there is some self-interest, there is something involved which is for your own individual benefit in every friendship. He had said this 2,000 years ago. Of course, the Americans want us to buy their weapons. Of course, the Americans don't want us to spend our money to support the defense industry of any other country, be it Russia or whatever. But the issue, sir, that we are grappling with, and the answers are very clear. What is the alternative at this time? America respects India's independence. We've shown it to them. We showed it to them right through the time we became independent. And 1971 was a wonderful example when the Americans sent in an aircraft carrier to browbeat us. Now they are sending one to support us. Bob Dylan said the times they are a-changing. So therefore, I believe that what the Americans are doing is to tell us that we are reliable partners. Guys, forget about what has happened in the past. Look to the present, look to the future. We are here to stay and be our friend, be our best friend forever. That's the American position. Okay, I believe India has no choice. If we don't trust them, who do you think will trust? The Chinese? Happy birthday. I'd rather jump off the Qutub Minar than trust the Chinese, sir.
Okay, let's hope that we trust Americans and they prove their trustworthy of it. And now let us talk about Quad. Quad has been in the offing for maybe over again a decade rather. And Australia now is inclined to join after all the hesitation it had over the last 1 decade. Now it is inclined to join the Quad. How do you see the significance of that?
There was a conflict in Australia between what they perceive to be their economic interests, with China being their largest purchaser of their natural resources, etc. I mean, Australia is called a continent. It's huge. And what they should have seen and they saw as their military interests or their political interests, which was not to have a China that is progressive. I believe that conflict has now been resolved. They realize that the Chinese are very uptight when it comes to anybody turning around and saying, guys, you are misbehaving. The Chinese have stopped buying from Australia their wine or whatever, their meats, etc. They are trying to put all kinds of sanctions, Chinese sanctions, if you please, on Australia. The Australians have realized very clearly. Coming into Quad, the basic idea is that, look, we want to team up with liberal democracies in the region to tell this big, bad communist bully that enough is enough. Here, sir, if I may take a moment to talk about Vietnam also. You know that I spent time in Vietnam. I learned the language. I was in the embassy there. I speak it fluently. Our child was born when we were in Vietnam. Let me just tell you, sir, that when I got my diploma from the University of Hanoi, at that time it was the Prime Minister of Vietnam, Pham Van Dong, may God rest his soul in peace. He gave me my diploma. He used to call me son. And I asked him, I said, Your Excellency, and I said, Father, Your Excellency, why are you fighting with the Chinese? I'm talking about late 1978 on the border. He said, I'll answer you in the words of the founder of modern Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. So what did he say? When 1945, so the Japanese surrendered after the Second World War, it was the nationalist Chinese who poured across the border to take their surrender. The French, who had been booted out by the Japanese, were maneuvering to come back. And there were many Vietnamese who said, let the Chinese stay because they'll be a buffer against the French coming back. Ho Chi Minh then said, look, the French are foreigners, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we'll throw them out. But if the Chinese come in, they will never leave. And he reminded them of their history. The last time the Chinese got into Vietnam, they stayed 1,000 years. So the Vietnamese also are now looking to join this coalition. I wouldn't be surprised. They don't have a very powerful navy, sir. I wouldn't be surprised if they say, let's have a Quad Plus in which we would also like to take part.
In fact, that was my next question, but you have already talked about that. My actually question was a broader, because several ASEAN countries, not only Vietnam, Philippines, etc., are very angry. So they want to take on China. But India has been reticent in maybe extending full-fledged support to them. So is it time for India to go all out?
Sir, there was a period when we felt that the Chinese could be urged to modify their behavior through friendship. You know, the whole thing about China getting into the World Trade Organization was, let us integrate them into the global economy, let's get them to behave according to international standards, and particularly according to international democratic standards. So we were totally deceived. They cheated, they lied, they bullied, and I believe that India too has realized this. I mean, the line of the demarcation, the sort of informal border, when the Chinese attacked us in 1962, they went back. Therefore, it was a signal that even the then Chairman Mao accepted that as the frontier. But now they don't accept that. What do they want? Come and take over New Delhi or Gurugram or Mumbai? And there has to be a test of reasonableness. The Chinese failed this test on every count. So India should, if there are other countries want, I mean, I would go to the extent of saying, sir, and this doesn't represent my government's policy, if Brazil or Argentina also want to send their navies into Quad, why not, sir? The more people we have telling the Chinese back off, I believe the greater impact it will have on those, what is the term I can use, on those people with a fixed mindset who presently rule China. And of course, Xi Jinping, as you know, he's the chairman of everything in China.
No, I wanted to actually ask you whether India, which has been reticent about expressing full-fledged support to Vietnam, Philippines and all that, is it time now, since the geopolitics has changed, China has deceived us again and again, I think this is the final nail in the coffin. So should India maybe do a joint naval exercises with Vietnam there in that region?
So I believe that now India should make it very clear to the rest of the world that we are of Asia, we will be of Asia, and we are not going to allow anybody to kick the rest of Asia around. Whether it's, with Vietnam already there's talk of defense cooperation. When I was posted there, we had sent a defense attaché. China attacked Vietnam in 1979 in February. Foreign Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was then in China. He cut short his visit. The Chinese will not hesitate to humiliate and insult whoever they are dealing with. That's their style. They are the Middle Kingdom. Well, let's just tell them that if you are the Middle Kingdom, it doesn't mean that you're in the middle of everything. Just don't keep poking your fingers, whether it's the 8 fingers in Pangong or whatever. The world is wise to your tricks, and India is going to stand up as a solid rock and tell ASEAN, tell Vietnam. Vietnam is a member of ASEAN also, as you know. Yeah. One time, of course, they were fighting with ASEAN, now they've joined. But the idea is to tell the world that, yes, we are here. We are democratic, we are free, and we believe that the seas, the oceans of the world are the common heritage of mankind, don't belong to any individual nations.
I ask this question because we have been talking about look east, now slogan has been changed to act east, but it is not really acting. We are not really acting. Even when China has been going through with CPEC, BRI and all that and poking us and maybe irritating us and doing everything else, but we have been kind of in our cocoon, isn't it?
Mr. Kaul, I would say that there is a time and place for everything. There's a fair in the tides of men, which taken at the, when the tide is rising, it leads to fame and fortune. Otherwise, you are stuck in the miseries of life. I believe our time has come for India to show what it means. As far as the China's Pakistan exploitation, what do you call it? Not exploitation corridor, economic corridor.
Association, association.
Yeah. No, CPC, I call it the China's Pakistan exploitation corridor. Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that is dead. That's dead as a doornail. The Chinese might say, we'll build this dam, we'll build that dam. It's not going to happen as far as I can see. The Chinese Prime Minister made these two major. And he said that we do not have full confidence in the political loyalty of the Chinese, the People's Liberation Army. I mean, is the army going to liberate the people of China from their government? Second thing, he said that the economy has messed, the virus has messed our economy up completely, and we will now have to cut expenditure on projects by 50%. Sir, there has never been a stronger convergence of international opinion against China. The time is now ripe. The time has come to teach China a lesson. They are very fond of teaching lessons to others. The time has now come. And India is no longer going to be reticent. If you see what the Prime Minister has been saying, what our outstanding Foreign Minister has been saying, it is to remind the world, okay guys, we have arrived.
So as you talked about timing is very, in fact, very interesting, because as we speak, US Secretary of State Pompeo is in London. He is also talking about security, shared security challenges. He is going to talk there. And to point out another thing, that UK has already decided or likely to send its aircraft carrier to the region. So is there something brewing? Is the international community now coming to terms that we have to take on China?
This is the spontaneous international coalition of the angry. The people who are sick and tired of China's behavior. I mean, all this wolf warrior diplomacy and all this nonsense, even the Africans have been calling in the Chinese ambassador and saying, guys, behave yourselves. I mean, don't get too aggressive because it's outside the norms of diplomatic protocol. Absolutely, sir. I don't think China has a friend, not even the people of Pakistan. Well, they may have a couple of fellows whom they have cultivated, like that character in North Korea and so on, but nobody takes them seriously. China, the sooner it realizes that it has overstepped its limit, its time to be the center of the world has not yet come, nor does the world want to see a communist China dominating the universe. And therefore, this coalition is coming together. It's a very spontaneous thing, sir. I wouldn't be surprised if the French and the Germans and a few others also join and send their ships to snoop around in the South China Sea.
So shall we expect some action in South China Sea or Indian Ocean region?
Let me, in that case, the Chinese are very fond of quoting Sun Tzu, their great philosopher, that if you can win the war without fighting, that's the best thing to do. So let's tell the Chinese that we are going to win this without fighting you. But if push comes to shove and we have to fight, we are going to deliver not just a technical knockout, but a clear knockout punch.
Okay, we are running out of time. Just brief comments, last brief comments. Taiwan is also preparing its military for an possible invasion by China. So again, I'll come to that. Is it time for India to speak up for Taiwan openly?
Absolutely, sir. There's no question about it. I speak my mind. I wear my heart on my sleeve. The world made a mistake by booting out Taiwan from the United Nations in 1978 and getting in these big bad fellows. It was a decision of the United Nations General Assembly. Well, there can be another decision to boot out the People's Republic of China unless it becomes democratic, and to let the Republic of China resume its rightful place. It was one of the founder members of the UN, and it was one of the first countries, one of the first 5 to get the veto in the UN Security Council. Their ambassador, when they were being thrown out, cried, and I remember his speech, and said the world will regret this. I believe he was absolutely right, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wise words. That's all we have in the agenda today. So that's all we have in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I will come back with another important topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.